There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hey BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my new channel. Today I'm going to do book haul, and I love watching book haul videos on BookTube. I know that they're a bit controversial. I think they should be short. I've already done one take of this. It was 24 minutes long. I have to get it down to half that, so here I go again. Number 1, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, Arundhati Roy's Booker Longlisted second novel. I'm actually 4/5 of the way through this. I absolutely love it. I'll probably have a full review when I'm finished, if I can string 2 or 3 words together to articulate how deeply I enjoyed it. I'm going to read the opening line, or a very brief excerpt from each book, something a little bit different. Here's the opening sentence. She lived in the graveyard like a tree. Fiona Melrose's debut novel Midwinter came out late last year, and I read it early this year and loved it. This is her second novel, out last month, Johannesburg, and it's an homage to Mrs. Dalloway, which I read for the 3rd time last month to prepare for this novel. The main character here is walking through the streets of Johannesburg on the day that Nelson Mandela dies. Here is the opening few lines from Johannesburg. It had been a bad night for nervous dogs. Thunder and rain, terrible and hot, had drenched the city. September's flattened cardboard boxes were wet through. From under his plastic sheet, he already knew this. The corrugated boxes no longer had the sort of spring he associated with a dry night and a good sleep. Penelope Lively, How It All Began, 2001 novel. I've never read any of her. Penelope Fitzgerald, I enjoyed one of her novels late last year. It's about an older lady who breaks her hip. The pavement rises up and hits her, slams into her face, drives the lower rim of her glasses into her cheek. She is laid out there, prone. What is this? Voices are chattering above her. People are concerned, of course. Waiting for the Rain, a 1975 novel by Charles L. Mungoshi from what was then known as Rhodesia, obviously Zimbabwe. This story is about a young man who goes abroad to study. His very traditional family in Zimbabwe is fully expecting him to return. He has no intention of returning. As he departs, they present him with painstakingly prepared sacred medicine, and he stamps upon it as he walks away from his village. Opening line. Things are happening here and there, and whether you can see them or not, you can't certainly say the old man doesn't see them. This was a real find. Selected Myanmar short stories, edited by Ma Tanegi. This is from 2009, so I don't know how heavily censored it is, but she translated all these stories from the Myanmarese language. Each story has a full-page glossy illustration, which I love. The opening story is called Marriage. It's a 1933 story by Thakpan Mongwa. Now then, I should write about married life after pondering on it for so long. Whatever backlash I suffer as the result, I alone have the reasonability. With all the millions of people on this earth, think of the millions of marriages. With all the creatures of the world, fish and fowl, think of the number of their marriages. Let us not bother with the few unmarried people. They are surely just a handful. Nina Bodden, George Beneath a Paper Moon. I am vaguely aware of her. George is a man who has a fairly boring life, except that he's really worried that he fathered the child of his 2 best friends who are a married couple. Sometimes George felt that nothing real had ever happened to him. The world swept on its passionate and catastrophic way, and he stood on the edge of it, watching. A novel from India, That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. This protagonist goes into hiding with her husband after he's accused of some kind of business corruption. The quote on the back is what I'll read. Mohan had managed to get the job. I never asked him how he did it. If Gandhari, who bandaged her eyes to become blind like her husband, could be called an ideal wife, I was an ideal wife too. I bandaged my eyes tightly. Rose Tremaine, I read her the Gustav Sonata this year and loved it. This is a book of her short stories, Evangelista's Fan. Listen to the opening sentence of one of them. Salvatore Cavalli, the eldest son of a Piedmontese clockmaker, was celebrating his 27th birthday in the year 1815 when he learned that the king of Piedmont had decided to remove a large slice of time from the calendar. Carol Shields' last novel, Unless, published just before or maybe after she died very tragically young of cancer in the 1990s. I never got around to reading this despite her being one of my favorite writers at the time, so finally I will. It's about a woman who's successful and life is kind of bland until her adult daughter becomes homeless. It happens that I am going through a period of great unhappiness and loss just now. All my life I've heard people speak of finding themselves in acute pain, bankrupt in spirit and body, but I have never understood what they meant. To lose, to have lost. I believe these visitations of darkness lasted only a few minutes or hours, and that these saddened people, in between bouts, were occupied, as we all were, with the useful monotony of happiness. But happiness is not what I thought. Happiness is the lucky pane of glass you carry in your head. It takes all your cunning just to hang on to it, and once it's smashed, you have to move into a different sort of life. Wow. Fear and Trembling by Amélie Nothomb, French writer, born in Kobe, Japan, but grew up in France. This is her story. Seems autobiographical, at least in that it's about a French woman born in Japan, grew up in France, returns to Japan, and works for a Japanese company. Apparently this was made into a movie, which I know nothing about. Mr. Haneda was senior to Mr. Omochi, who was senior to Mr. Saito, who was senior to Miss Mori, who was senior to me. I was senior to no one. This has gotten longer than I wanted, so it's going to be split into two parts, so please stay tuned for the second part of my Japan book haul video for August.